One.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. We're back with another in-studio session with Adam and Kate, and the excitement is here. The excitement is here around spacecraft and science fiction. So welcome, guys. How's everybody doing today?
Happy phenomenal.
Whoa, right? I'm pretty excited because I have my sci-fi shirt on. See? It's like rocket ships and moons and stuff. I dug it out of my closet and here I am. So this
and I'm failing. I am failing at the sci-fi attire game. So I need to maybe find myself a shirt.
And if anyone's watching this has some suggestions on like t-shirts or hats or paraphernalia, like I would love to hear them. Like how can we
Dress Caitlin in the comments below.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. and Princess Leia is not an option, right?
Yeah. So I have a special introduction, and we're hoping to keep this leitmotif of content creation going. I don't want to lose the momentum of our roots and why we started this podcast. So the idea is that we're putting on display for everybody the creation of a science fiction novel, right? The writing process. And so what goes hand in hand with that process is creativity from a video standpoint. And so here I am as the philosopher in part and in partnership with Adam and Kate. We threw together a little video and we'd like to share it with everybody. Adam did the voiceover, I did the compilation. And I think next week I'm gonna put that same challenge to Kate for a voiceover. So we'll see if we can keep bouncing that back and forth. I don't know. Are you comfortable doing a voiceover, Kate?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. It would not be my first voiceover.
There's a bit of a something there. There's like, what is that voice?
I don't know if you know.
Too?
I'm kind of a big deal.
That's her Maleficent persona coming out there.
Oh yeah, I did have a Maleficent character once.
Oh, that's
story for another time.
Okay. So what did we do? We did the countdown. We're live. Everything's going great. But now I'm going to actually do another video. So everybody, hold on while I play this bad boy.
World more extraordinary than the one we're standing on. You know, to look past the horizon and not see fear of the unknown, but excitement. You know, slingshotting around the moon, like that sounds insane. And yet here we are controlling that, using it for our own purposes. You know, we can build rockets that fire and accelerate to 11 kilometers per second. I mean, that type of velocity on Earth is crazy, but in outer space, relative to what? So our whole notions of how we exist, of space and time and velocity and changing, if that is completely different, how does humanity change? And I think that is ultimately the question that science fiction is trying to answer, right? How do humans connect, and how do they love, and how do they respond to the extraordinary? How do they investigate mysteries and keep going with this fearless desire to know more and to build? We build these satellites, we build Skylab, the giant science experiments. We spend all this money on manifesting our imaginations. It was only a century ago that flying was this grandiose new thing, and here, you know, we take the flight for granted. This concept of drag or thrust, you know, and now we've all seen astronauts in space weightless around, and I think we're on the cusp of something amazing where the human experience can evolve into something maybe we've never even imagined.
There we go, guys. If that's not inspiration for us, what are we doing wrong here?
I'm quite proud of that. It only took 2 takes, and I kind of made it up on the fly. So I was
Good job.
watching the video out of one eye and recording, and yeah, Very cool. Thanks, Dan.
You know what my initial, you gestalt it, right? Because I didn't know. I send it to Adam, email come back in, a couple hours, it seemed like. Oh, here you go. I was like, oh, okay. So it's, now I had to gestalt it a little bit because I was trying to think, is that Adam? And then but it was Adam, right? And as actual, his delivery is some, very kind of like laid back, but like you can sense the character of Adam in there, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, awesome.
Right. And it was, because it was only 2 takes, it was really cool because I could give him the main clip and then he matched his voice so very easily. Like it didn't take me a long time to, shrink a little bit of the visuals and then match up with what he was saying. So guys, that if you guys can do that, I'll buckle down and put something like that together with the launch of each one of these pieces.
All right. So the bar has been set.
Brilliant.
Is what we're saying.
The bar is set, but I'll raise it just a little bit more because we have to discuss now what do we do with that? I don't want it to be buried inside our conversation video. It should be, I don't want to get too markety on this, but it should have something that, goes to a call of action of some sort, right? Like how do people, what do they do with that video at the end? Do we put something on the end of it and do it as a short? Do we, push it out to say, here's the pre-order to the book, the collaborative sort of experience? How do we, kind of keep a momentum around what the project is doing?
I think we
like
could
that.
take these shorts and send them out to people in our network and ask them to do voiceover and see what they come up with. I think that would be really cool.
Ooh,
Right?
I like that.
And to start, you can send it to specific people who we know are interested, and then hopefully if people are following and interested, they could speak up, or maybe we hold competitions or something. I think that'd be really cool to see. Okay, here, I saw that clip and I immediately thought about how amazing this concept of outer space is, right? Like, what a crazy thought experiment to consider. If there was no equal and opposite force pushing back on you, what would happen? What is, it's crazy. It's cool. It's amazing. And this idea of slingshotting around the moon, right? Sounds totally bizarre if first time you read about that or see about it. But you're like, yeah, that's how it works in space, right? It's all circles. We just follow them. No big deal, right?
I love the idea of the competition, right? Like, and now one of the things that we do at Planksip is we have a free-form associative technique for creativity. And so the idea is that we have new contributors that join Planksip and they're given a list of quotes. And the idea is not to consult with the Google Oracle and go and find out who made the quote, but to look at that with your current knowledge set and think, okay, what does that quote mean to me? What are the things that kind of drop into the cranium, if you will? Mm-hmm. What are the things that, what do you think about? And so the whole thing is that you don't have to stress and strain to figure out, how do I want to synthesize this? Basically, you're saying, oh, I thought about this, right? And you just kind of free flow with it, and then take it on sort of like on a dendritic journey, myelinating into the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's
phenomenal.
Amazing. And maybe that's how we invite guests on the show, right? You want to be on our show, you got to do a voiceover. Like, maybe that's like part of the process, something like that. Caitlin just sent me
I like it.
an email. I was like, hey, I met this person. It'd be super cool to have him on our show, right? I've got
talking about like the trends of AI and what it's going to mean for the future. So I think that'll have a good. I might actually pull some of his blogs.
Well, I think anybody in the science fiction community too. Right now, we're talking about an outward campaign to get some stuff in front of people and say, free form associate on this. Can you talk about this particular clip? Right, we're going to be focusing on these themes. Mm-hmm. Would you love to be a guest, kind of thing, right? And our guest voiceover is blah blah blah, right? Kind of thing, right?
I love it.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Okay,
let's do it.
Cool.
Okay, all right. it's a deep breath because it's kind of a lot to coordinate for a weekly piece. But Adam, hats off. I'd send it to you and it was turned around. So we got to do that, kind of quickly. And I know you guys are capable of doing it. So it's fun. I think we got to build stuff ever better, ever stronger kind of thing, right?
There you go. Yeah. And we had some fun last week, Dan. You challenged us to kind of write from the point of view of developing a time capsule for 300 years from now and what we would put in it.
That's right.
And
yeah,
we had some very interesting discussions around this.
Okay, well, let's do some order of business first. Okay. I think what we need to do in the YouTube description, okay, is we should have a working document to this title. Now, we maybe haven't got there. My vote is a Google Doc, but you guys are the authors. So if you'd rather work in a Microsoft environment and want to do like a Word doc, no problem. But I think the idea is, and you can vote it down, yay or nay, but what we can put is a working document where people can comment on it, right? And we start to build out those chapters, right?
Love it.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now, was the result of the challenge from last week about the time capsule? Did it end in the discussion points which you wanted to bring, or did you guys actually, sketch out or start writing an introduction, or was it just a discussion?
Well, it started by Adam did this amazing journey, and he wrote first, and then sent it over to me, and it was this whole time capsule thing, and I'm reading through it, and I'm like, okay, he did this really cool thing where he actually talked about what does it mean to be human, and took all aspects of humanity and tried to relay that into the capsule, which was super cool, right? All aspects of who we are. But I really struggled, and I said, Adam, I'm struggling with this exercise. And so we had a chat, and I said, what are you time capsuling? Why is there anything physical to begin with? Everything will be recorded. From this point on, we've already started recording everything. It's already, somebody wants to go back in history, they see the pictures, they see the articles. But then we got thinking that there is things that just won't exist anymore unless it's in an archive, a physical book. Just no one's going to be printing those anymore. We're going to get information differently. We don't think people will even be driving vehicles. The personal gas vehicle, the whole concept's not going to be there anymore, 600 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Let me throw an idea your way then, guys. Okay. Let me throw an idea your way. Because from a philosophy standpoint, I really thought about this, and I think it may dovetail, but it's going to be your intuition about this. Okay.
I'm ready.
I'm completely fine with saying, let's stay away from the time capsule idea. I think your intuitions are correct in terms of everything is going to be recorded. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think what would be worth elaborating and explaining and building into the narrative is the recall function capability. So what I mean by that is that our cognitive ability and our memory is focused into both short-term and long-term recall. These types of things, okay? So we may have a continuous live stream of recorded you-ness or me-ness or Adamness, right? But the recall ability is now to recall the digitized version of us, to be able to look at us from that third party or from that objective sort of perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm very interested in the recall function, right? Maybe building on the Google Oracle, okay? The Google Oracle, it's you can pull stuff back,
right?
But it's about being able to pull it back in the most useful and to the most biological advantage kind of thing, right? What does that look like?
So we had a really interesting chat about kind of that concept, right? Is that now up until now, up until the digital world, history was made by the people who wrote it down, right? Like if you took an American history book, you would never hear about I think it was the War of 1812, where we actually, Canada pushed back all the way to the White House, right? Like you don't hear about that. That's something that's in Canadian history. So it's really interesting to see the different takes on history depending on who's writing the book. Well, now where everybody's writing their book, bless you. Now where everybody's writing their story, their book, their truths, they're out there. Like you're getting so many different perspectives. So we said, okay, how do you verify what's history? Right. And then we were talking about blockchain technology and being able to verify via multiple sources and then lock it in at a certain point and being able to blockchain history. And so you could say, this has been validated. You cannot undo this. This is history, instead of it being somebody's opinion who wrote the book.
Okay. Adam, what do you think?
So that's a really, there's a whole thing there about like, okay, what does that do to people's behavior if history can't be manipulated? And I'm sure we'll find a way. But one thing we talked about was, okay, if our notion of a time capsule maybe doesn't exist anymore because everything's recorded anyway, so you can just go look all that up. But what can't be recorded are the individual experience. So like my hopes, my dreams, my thoughts about things, my philosophies. When you talk about recall, I immediately thought of, you see in sci-fi movies or reading books where someone could like bring up a persona of a deceased person. It's not them, but the computer kind of simulates them based on the information it has about them, right? So you can have a conversation with your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather simulated, right? And kind of talk about things, about what they're going from their point of view or whatever. That might be the equivalent of this time capsule in the future.
Okay, so is it somewhat similar to the space shard palace that Superman had with his father kind of thing?
Hey, look at that. I know this reference.
Yeah. Russell Crowe, right? In the Man of Steel. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So he's like there, but he's not there, right? So, and what then happens? Like if you have this ability to store that kind of information and then this wisdom can be passed on, how does that affect the evolution of knowledge in terms of the human condition, right? We always say we're doomed to repeat our mistakes eventually, right? But if it's being recorded, it's not so easy to forget, right? Think about World War II. If we had high definition video footage from impartial sources and video cams and stuff of what actually happened there, how would that affect us, separated now a couple generations differently, right? I don't know. It's
lest we forget, right?
Yeah,
lest
exactly.
we forget. But
right.
The problem is to try and bring it back and to initiate an experience again, right? That's kind of the idea. If and that's really what I'm interested in is that recall ability, because if we have a society with a real pluralistic approach to history, where everybody's history is uniquely their own, which I think is interesting, really, really interesting. We're building silos, okay? And the silos, how do you maintain a eusocial transfer of information between them? Now, certainly we can reconcile them if we had to, but the point is like, what's that trigger that says I have to reconcile this? Is it a difference of opinion, right? We're running into an issue about how to integrate the realities, right?
You're talking about fact versus perception of what happened.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, fact. Even it's what the meaning is. The meaning is the concept. Nobody's in dispute of the fact, right? But even a structure for how we interpret the facts is also something that's to many cultural theorists is something that is is very subjective.
Yeah.
So we're unified in a sense by an interpretation of whatever our borders, what happened in this war or history or whatever. And it doesn't matter if those facts are exactly true. What matters is that the story we tell about who we are and our identity as a group is the same, and that unifies us. So if you now objectively pull that apart, what happens to a culture? Right?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to take it this way, but I've been, like I told you guys that I'm working on the Will Freeman novel. So it's about how to put a humanity inside of a woman, for example, and Sophia, right? So this is the idea of the love of wisdom. This is the embodiment of philosophy is Sophia, and I'm playing with the ideas of biologically saying what is the lowest common denominator, and then Adam as an engineer, we talk about first principles, we talk about foundational concepts, and I'm going to assert and put something out for us to talk about and say the biochemical reactions are shared between me and Kate and Adam. There are only a certain number of neurotransmitters, right? There's only a certain amount of biochemical reactions that actually occur in our brain in relation to the information that we're seeing. So I wonder what it means to focus on eudaimonia and living the good life to understand what that right balance of biochemical reactions are in our brain. And this gets into it even might crack the door open a little bit to psychedelics and chemically induced states of euphoria and happiness. But I throw it on the table. What is that what we have to look forward to because of the complexity and the entropy that's waiting around the next corner?
I think this is really interesting because we had talked a little bit, when we imagined our future, we talked in previous episodes about like you'll be able to plug in and you can control your sleep cycles and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think I had considered what you're talking about, Dan. I was like, what if you could also control the chemicals in your brain? So like, you want to be happy? Be happier, right? What's real, what's not real, right? If you have this thinking that can like temper your mood and your emotions and all this kind of stuff. And then what does that do to the human experience? Because part of the human experience is this messy disaster that we just have to deal with on a daily basis. And that, that struggle kind of defines us, right? So if you slowly eliminate that struggle, what happens, right? Do we start to lose part of our humanity in that connection? I think this is a really fun sandbox to play in when we try and imagine what happens to people, right? Like what.
Well, so I think maybe a little bit too, just like now we have ethical, laws that are stopping us from going down some scientific rabbit holes, right? If you will, or scientific discoveries. There's limitations, at least in North America. There's, maybe more than other places, but I think the future state will still have those. Like, could you do it? Sure. Is it allowed? Is it like, if you're getting chipped in at birth, right, to be connected to this matrix essentially that you can plug in, jump in and out of, that it's still going to be designed to meet government regulations, right? Because it's going to be obviously heavily regulated. It's not just going to be a free for all. So I think there you're going to have some limitations, like based off of what the government decides is the system you're going to operate in. Like, I don't think that's going away.
Yeah, well, we don't want to get pulled down too much of a rabbit hole but I think this is really core and really, really important. So although the first task was to say the takeaway was to go and write this, okay.
We did it.
You did it, and you guys, but and then cathartically we realized that this limitation of trying to imagine something based on the container of a time capsule was, let's dismiss it. And so we've blank slated that, right?
Right.
And so
And instead
my question though, Kate, is to say, what do you guys imagine just the beginning introduction of this type of thing? How are you going to introduce the characters? Is it something that you're going to introduce it as this particular time period, the struggles, or we're going to parachute right into the 600 years from now?
You're dropped right in. We've drafted up a beginning paragraph, and it's essentially the main character is waking up, and he's not waking up the normal way somebody wakes up to, right? He the system is waking him up, right?
Okay.
And it wakes you up with a nice warm tingly feeling, and all of a sudden you're awake, like full energy, right from deep REM to awake kind of thing. And the system interacts with your house, and so all of a sudden the windows are untinted, so now it's no longer dark, right? Everything integrates. But he's looking outside and he thinks to himself, man, I remember my great-great-grandmother telling me stories of, the alarm clock, and people actually woke up to a loud buzzing noise. How archaic is that, right? And just they actually had to hang sheets over their windows. They had these full-on sheets over their windows, and people would pay lots of money for these sheets and have fancy sheets over their windows just to make it dark. And this whole concept is so bizarre to him. And then, just kind of explaining it through it, funny enough, through kind of his experiences when he got to talk to his great grandmother and pull back their memories, right? That they can pull forward. And so there is a lot more of that kind of tribal knowledge, that you don't just sit down with your grandma and she tells you stories. She shows you the stories, right? When I teach my kids, I pull up YouTube, let's check this out. This is how it happened, right? So it's just an interesting way. So you're getting shooted right in, and we're going to explain everything as it goes. So there might be these recall moments, right?
So do we get a live read preview of this, or is this? And before we do that, even if you want to do that, I do have a question about the tingly feeling. So what was your thoughts?
Well, a question like that cannot wait a second longer. You better ask it.
So the tingly feeling, okay, so I have a tingly meter sort of thing. Okay, now this is a spectrum of tingly experience. So it could be shit, my foot's asleep tingly, or it could be on the other side of orgasmic kind of tingly, right?
Too intense.
Maybe too much to wake up to every morning, right? It's because then you just go back to sleep. Or half the species would just go back to sleep, right?
Right, and all that sleep after.
Cigarettes would still be a thing.
Most likely the male. Cigarettes would be a thing. You wake up. No, so.
Or there's the tingly, when you read something or you learn something and those hairs seem to stand up, right? Wow, that was so cool, right?
Okay, I can tell you what I pictured when we were talking about it. And then maybe you bring in an interesting point. Maybe that's the setting you can pick.
Okay.
Right? Maybe you can pick the setting of how you want to wake up, the feeling.
Practical joking in the future is going to be amazing.
You put the chip in. It's okay, all right. So the people that are kind of masochistic, it's when your foot falls asleep and you're pissed off and you're stamping it on the ground. That's how you wake up? That would scare me every morning. I'd be like...
Yeah, well... You should hear my alarm clock. It scares me every morning, but I get out of bed. The way I pictured it is when you walk out into the sunshine after being in the shade.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I imagined it in my head.
Okay.
There's so many nice analogies to that. And I want to talk about myth for a minute. And Adam's just wanting to chat. It's just so exciting. So the ideas of myth and the long human history that we have as sun worshippers, and I don't mean, orange skin kind of, sunbathers. I mean just the cycle of the sun. The sun is the birth of everything, right? And so I love that description. And so I wonder, can we use that birthing of the novel, of the characters, as that feeling, that deep describing feeling of the sun rise, right?
Ooh.
That would be
Look at
really
you
cool.
in depth. I like that.
Absolutely.
So it's like really poetically get this introduction of the sunrise feeling, and then it starts to explain, how that alarm clock had works.
Right?
I love that notion, and I think the best books, the ones that I enjoy the most, are the ones that spend the time to draw out that experience, right? We're just talking about waking up, but are we really? We're talking about the human experience in this setting, and in doing so, we're letting the reader know, or the audience, about the world that we've created, right? We describe this person waking up, having a shower, getting ready for work, going to work, and then, probably there's some kind of problem or small sort of antagonistic development in which he has to interact with other people. And, every movie has the intro scene where they're, the cop saves the day, and then, okay, that's the hero, we got it, right? So that's kind of how we introduce the world, rather than, just a few sentences or kind of glazing over it or whatever, right? Like, you got to take the time, and not only that, but to the character, you got to understand how this character feels about all this, right? My most disappointing reads with the coolest concepts have always been the ones where they haven't taken the time, where I don't connect to the character. By the end of it, I'm like, yeah, right?
Yeah, we got to really stretch that out. If you build something about a sunrise and realize that enlightenment process is ingrained in that transition from subconscious to conscious, which is really the difference between a sleep state and a waking state, means it's no longer something that you worship. It's just something of our biology. So it's like an underpinning of our existence, has to do with, this movement towards the felt experience of the sun on your face. I think it's brilliant. But you got to magically write that. Really, it's got to be a piece of art. That opening has got to be,
for sure. But and if in the future a large majority of the population lives in space stations, then they won't have that experience, right? You could have people that live their whole lives in space and never actually see a sunrise, other than like maybe a simulated one. So then this experience becomes very actually critical to giving people that feeling of awe, or whatever it is, that that like perfect moment where you're just like perfectly present, right?
Well, you think about this idea of, from religious sort of wisdom, it says people want to be connected to something bigger than themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest thing that we know of in at least our universe is the sun, and it's, it shows up like clockwork. So it's like, it's there. It is bigger than us. There is, like, this is the one thing that I just, we have this ability to say, to realize the beauty of what my favorite color, for example, is that the translucent part of green that comes through the leaves in the photosynthesis action. That if you look at the sunlight coming through that and the beautiful glowing color of green, that's my favorite color.
See, you give me an idea here.
The light that it gives.
I love this, because if we start the book with this kind of scene and really take the time to make this just perfect, later on, like as we go through the plot, what we imagined was this person is unplugged, like ripped from the system, dropped off on a planet that's unplugged, and for the first time in his life has to experience, the regular rise and fall of a sunset. And we could just have this metaphorical transformative experience involving the sun, and we can relate that back right to the very beginning, and how he wakes up every morning. Like, I get it now. I didn't know what that was. Like, it could be this like very beautiful full cycle transformation. I think that would be really neat. feel like
I like
Kate
that.
is there now.
Yeah, that's
And the
really
spirit
interesting.
of what's going on behind Kate there, I don't know if there's multiple sons, but we could, be a little cocky there and put a couple different gods in the sun sort of thing competing. Anyways, I'm just being a little bit goofy, but you can it's up to us recreate this, whether we're somewhat being tongue in cheek or whether we're it's really cool, right? So I think that those visualizations really have to set the stage
I love that.
I like
for
that.
the piece.
And we can have a
And then like
go ahead.
I really definitely when he goes back, like when he recalls, right, his great grandmother's stories, or the great images that they pull forward that gets translated to him. Like, I definitely want to make a deep contrast between like how archaic, even though it's like technically today, how archaic it seems, like how raw and vulnerable and like just almost like when we look back on Renaissance times and how like just archaic it seems, and just like you can't imagine, but like the differences, right? And like things that would be intolerable in today's day and age, right? That was just how they lived back then. That's kind of like the deep contrast we're going to make between the future state and present. But it forces us to take a look at present day and really think, like, is this going to be here? And how truly archaic are we right now? And that's not an easy thing to do.
Well,
Let me throw a curveball your way then.
okay.
Oh no, Adam has a point. Adam has a point. I want to hear that.
All right, this is a rabbit hole. I'm just going to glaze over it. We can maybe return to it later. But when I think of this notion of a sunset and the tingle meter and like being present, if people in the future are living to be 150, 200 years old, right? Do you live life less intensely, right? When your lifespan is shorter, are you far more present and intense in the moment than if you have an extended lifespan? Are you kind of busier, or is it not such a biological concern? Or you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. You can unpack that later.
No, say it again, though. Say it again, Adam, because I didn't quite get that.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I garble? If we're living longer, if in the future we have the medical technology to extend our lifespan to, say, 200 years, right? So, you'd have 5 or 6 generations of your lineage alive at the same time. But, when we're living, lifespan right now is like 80 years, let's say, average. So your ability to focus on the present moment, right? And that like pressure, that deadline is looming. So you're much more, you live kind of intensely in that moment for a reason. But if you live longer, then are you kind of less intense? Do you let years go by without like kind of trying new things or whatever? Or you just kind of, does it dilute the human experience? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I could add something on this. I think there's a really interesting model that if we, and hopefully you guys like models because of your consulting background here, but try and make a note of this. I think it's a really important thing that if you sketch it out in a model, there's a real kind of psychological framework at play here that directly relates to culture. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I go back, let's say, 2000 years, where as I always, kind of go back to like ancient Greece, 2,500 years. Okay. It's where the birthplace of culture, at least from a Western philosophy, begins. Now, if the average lifespan at that particular period of time was 50. We're not saying that there wasn't 70, 80, 90-year-old people, but the average life expectancy was quite lower. Mm-hmm. I think that cultural transmission was different based off of the exact point that you just made. So what we do is we think about what it would be like to grow up and not have the benefit of a mother or a father at an age that I am, say for example. So I'm 45, and so the majority of people at 45 did not have mothers or fathers on in the community. They may have some older people, but instead of going to your kin-based instead of returning to your kin and asking your kin and having an engagement with your father, your mother, right? You would be having it with somebody in your tribe or your group, right? That elder sort of person would be, in the community, as opposed to in your household or at the other end of a Skype call or something like this, right? So what Adam's describing here now is that it's not just that there's one person in the kin, there's another 2 to 3 other people in that lineage type of thing. Yeah. And so, now I'm not going to put any assertion on that, but you can see that this is how we form the containers between, the progression from the earlier time period to the future. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we look to the past to understand how would we characterize it years ago, and then extrapolate it out into the future, and then just make some assumptions based off of that. Right. Did you get what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
That's really,
and this forms the foundation of what the societal interaction is. It's not like you say, this is my idea of what it is. You're saying we're basing it off of the fact that average life expectancy was this, and it doesn't even have to be in the book that way, right? Mm-hmm. It can be like, here's the reality of the way it is in the future, and we take enough time to flush it out and say, this is what it is. It actually comes out to be a perfect little soundbite to put out, when you're advertising your book, or mm-hmm. this kind of thing, another little video or something.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So if I follow this path, back in the day, people didn't live long. So you had one elder in the village, right? And that was the wise person that kind of guided everybody. Now people tend to live a lot longer. So you tend to have, parents, grandparents when you're younger, and then parents up until, you're probably in your 50s or older even, right? In the future then, if you've got a whole bunch of them, plus you have this ability to simulate and talk to really anyone in history as if they were there, do you now have too much choice? Would you stay within the confines of your own kin and your own belief system, or would you, as you think of a teenager, go seek out somebody that you relate to or whatever and get wisdom from different places? And, is that terrifying? That'd be how I would end that.
Are you guys willing to
terrifying for a parent?
Are you guys willing to take this to a dystopian reality, right? I mean, we've got all the beautiful part of the sunrise, but does the dystopian reality become very fractured and contentious, and it's not a utopia world where everybody gets along? It's like, there's the Adam tribe and the Kate tribe and the Daniel tribe, right? And our independent lineages, right? Mm-hmm. What? And so describing it as actually really, it would be kind of dystopian, because that doesn't sit with us as being ideal of any sort, right? But the descent of man, right, and the evolution of humanity, or sapiens, right? It doesn't give a shit about that.
Well, and I think, so just back a little bit to Adam's point, you have all these people alive, but if you have access to everything, do you use them? So I talk to my mother almost, every day, if not every other day. But do I go to her for recipes? No, I check Google. Right? Every once in a while she'll send me a recipe, but before, if she wanted a recipe, she was pulling out Nana's old recipe book. She was going to the history. That's where she got recipes from, right? Maybe a magazine, you could cut one out, right? That's how you added some new flavors to your cooking. But now, I don't do that. I want to cook something. I Google the best whatever I'm cooking.
Yeah.
And I
World's
pick the
best.
first
Yeah.
recipe that comes up.
So maybe the quality of the interactions then maybe increase, right? The
Different.
quality or difference, but I think that is one thing we wanted to demonstrate. If our book had a purpose or forever, it was to, if there is a dystopian future where we're not connected, there is kind of like an animosity or not an animosity, but a competition, or we're not working together, especially in business, then how can one individual's transformative experience then affect a ripple effect in people around this person, and kind of like the change in not only this person but hope for the future in society. So that's kind of, I think, a grandiose theme that we wanted to play with a little bit, right? If one person can change, many can. And so I hadn't thought of it in terms of dystopia, but maybe that's a good way to set the ground, is that it's not Star Trek, right? It's not this perfect future where we don't have currency and poverty's been eliminated and all this kind of stuff. It's still messy,
Yeah, I think, okay, so are you on an agreement that we're at least going to discover, or we're going to go down that rabbit hole, Kate, and try and explore dystopian, some dystopian elements to this piece?
I think so.
100%.
Like, I picture Blade Runner.
I think-
Like, if I were to picture a theme or like a mood, that's what I imagine. Blade Runner.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do, it's not so much that I'm going to do assignments for you guys, because I can't, at this point, I can't give you that next writing piece, right? We're still fleshing it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to focus on a clip, a little montage of about maybe say a minute or two, like I did with Adam. And I'm going to push it over to Kate, and it's going to be on dystopian.
Ooh.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll try and get that out in the next couple days. We're getting down to the last couple minutes of today's episode. Is there anything else?
So I wanted to add.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wanted to add. You asked if we were going to read and do like little. We will,
Okay.
as soon as we've agreed on a section, we'll pick some pieces and we'll read. Sure.
Yeah, and always subject to revision, because that's the whole idea of what this podcast is about, is that there's no guarantee that it's going to be in the final product. Just like the time capsule, we explore it, we write about it, we cut it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We add it, we manipulate it, we bring it back, we resurrect it, whatever we want to do. The creative process, can function that way, right? So
Yeah.
that's cool.
No, I
Okay.
love it. Let's explore.
We're in. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. The countdown works the other way too, so that I think will bring us to a conclusion, unless there's something else that you guys just is sitting there right on the tip of your tongue. I'll give you one last chance to say it. Otherwise, we're gonna sign off for now and see everybody next week. Guys, do you have anything else to add?
No,
Not this time.
I can't wait to see Caitlin's sci-fi flair for next time.
Oh my gosh. Amazon, I need a delivery. What am I going to wear?
Awesome, guys.
Future, what will I wear? Okay.
Watch for it. Tune in next week.
See you guys next week.
Bye.